Hello, everyone. Welcome to our weekly discussion series that's hosted by the Chaldean Cultural Center in collaboration with U of M Detroit Center, Unique Voices in Films, and CMN TV. Today, our guest is actress Samya Rahmani. Hi, Samya.
Hi.
So Samya starred in the film Pomegranate. I've interviewed so many people about this film, and now I have the lead actress on it here, and we're so happy to have her here. She has an interesting background. She was born in London, England, to Iraqi parents. She started acting at age 11 when she played a small role in Guys and Dolls and stayed involved in theater throughout high school and university. Samya broke out into television and film with her most recent work, including Child Bride, which screened at the 2019 Cannes Film Festival Short Film Corner. She also plays Lamma in the new television series Little America, streaming on Apple TV. She's made an appearance on the CW's Riverdale and Charmed, and plays the role of Zadi in the new Hulu original comedy Woke. Her credits also include Turner and Hooch on Disney and Freedom's Motherland. Samya has trained at the Vancouver Academy of Dramatic Arts and at the esteemed William Esper Studio in New York City. And it all shows, Samya.
Thank you.
It shows your talent, I mean, your background. So you were born in London.
Mm-hmm.
And how long were you there before you've moved to Canada?
Not long. I grew up in Jordan. So I was born in London, but I grew up most of my life in Amman in Jordan. And I moved to Canada when I was 8 years old. But then I was there for a few years, and then I finished high school in Jordan and came back to Canada when I was 18. So most of my life has been between Canada and Jordan.
So the Arab culture was very influential, like very present in your life.
Yeah,
because you lived there, you went to school there.
Mm-hmm.
So had you ever lived or visited Iraq through the process?
Briefly, I would say I have some memories there, but when I was very young. But my parents, they instilled the Iraqi language, the culture, the food, the dancing, all of it. They managed to keep that wherever we went. So, which, stayed with me. And I'm very, very grateful for it.
Yeah, we're grateful for that too. That's why you did such an amazing job, really. Like, we were very, very happy to find you because you had all these elements and, the elements of the talent of being an actor and really surrendering into that role. So you played it off very well. And one of the things that you said about playing in Pomegranate is that you're related to that role.
Mm-hmm.
And can you share a little bit with us about that? Like, how was that relatable to you? The character of Niran, who is a liberal Muslim living in Sterling Heights, which is nicknamed Little Baghdad.
Yes. Right off the bat, I related to the story and to the character of Niran in many ways, to be honest. The first one, her being, Iraqi Muslim young woman, and then being a child of immigrant parents, coming into the West, trying to find her place in the world, being stuck between two worlds and trying to navigate that identity and, the journey to assimilating, but still preserving her culture and her values. Also having her own independent values and her own independent views on the world, and navigating that against what society is telling her, what her parents are telling her, what people are telling her who to be and how to be, and all these things. And then there's the side of her that's an artist that I also relate to as a creative, that people trying to tell you who you are and who to be as a creative, that kills you even more. Like, it's even more important because you can't create your art, you can't it stifles you. So I really related to her. It's the survival, it's as basic as survival for her to be herself and to stand up for herself and her values.
Yes. So then how was your experience when you decided to be an actress? I mean, you said that the first role that you had was at the young age of 11. How did
Mhm,
that come about? Was it with the support of your parents, or is something
mhm.
that you chose?
You know, the way you are, you think everyone is like that. So you know, in my family, my siblings, myself, we're all creative, and my parents are very supportive. I think, you know, Iraqis in general, we value, you know, the arts, and there's so much that came out of our region that, you know, as a society, I feel, especially like growing up in Jordan, I feel there is a difference. Iraqis really value music and art and history, and it's a very rich culture. So my family definitely carried that, and they were always supportive of that. But for me, I always saw it as a hobby because of the culture that I grew up around. In general, you know, you're supported, and your, you know, your creativity or your talents are valued, but not to the point where they're like, go have a career, make a career out of it. And it's not to say my parents were against that, but it just didn't occur to me. It didn't occur to me to do that, especially that I was good at school and I had other, you know, skills or talents. So, you know, you're encouraged to follow that or the traditional path. So I just kept it as a side hobby. I would say like an extracurricular in school. And I only came about to, you know, actually pursue it as a profession. Um, Being in Vancouver, first of all, there is an industry here, and I was getting opportunities, like kind of random ones, and I was on this journey of self-discovery, you know, in my 20s. So yeah, all of it just kind of came together, and you know, slowly, after I made the decision to kind of pursue what I want to do, and I was on the hunt for what that is, it was there all along, of course. It just took a while for me to see it.
You know, you mentioned earlier about Iraqis and our background and their
Mhm.
appreciation for arts and culture and the music and all these things. And you know, as we've discussed so many times, and I never think that I feel like it needs to continuously be discussed because it's something that seems foreign to most people outside of Iraq, that we do have that arts and culture and that appreciation that hardly gets to be noticed. Did you did you actually notice that over the years that there was this discrepancy, or there's like this type of stereotype that's being placed? Like one was that, I don't know if, like for me, I was much older when I came to that realization. Like I was at Heathrow Airport one day on a transit. We'd visited Europe, and we were in Heathrow Airport on a transit to come. Actually, we had gone like to Morocco and stuff. And then on the way back, I just stopped at a bookstore, and I saw these rack of books that were all written by Western authors, and on the cover were all these females that were like in a hijab, and they were all threatened. Like I read the synopsis, and every one of them was threatened by either a father or a brother or a husband. And I was kind of shocked that even though I had come to the United States at age 10, and I'd lived here for so long, and I was a writer, and I was excited, I had no clue that this was the only view that people had of us, that the West had of us. And so when I came home, I made it a mission. Like I started searching for these stories that were more realistic, and I realized really there were hardly any out there. And at that point, that's when I decided like I would write true life stories, or close to reality as possible, as authentic as possible. Was there a moment in your life where you noticed that, like, were you kind of naive and just kind of thinking like everybody views us the way we are, and then something kind of changed that, or made you become more aware about the reality of how we're being viewed as?
100%. I think I've had moments, and in different ways. So yeah, growing up in Jordan, there was two things. First, let me start with Canada. When I first moved to Canada, it was pre 9/11, and when I moved back later, when I was older, it was post 9/11. And so pre 9/11, people didn't know much about Arabs, to be honest. Like, oh, you're Arab, you're Muslim, whatever. Like, you felt invisible in a way. Like, they had no label for you. So I literally always felt, that made me feel even more in between, or as an outsider, because there were no like labels or anything, which in a way, looking back, maybe was better. But that was one thing I noticed. And same thing, growing up in Jordan. I grew up in Jordan pre the 2003, war and all that, where a lot of Iraqis then came to Jordan. But before then, when I grew up there was a very small community of Iraqis compared to what it is now, and we knew most of them. And so again, people didn't know much about Iraqis. They didn't have stereotypes to attach to what being an Iraqi is. At least people my age or what people I was talking to. Most people didn't even know I was Iraqi because I speak both dialects. I spoke the local dialect. But post, after the huge influx of Iraqis coming to Jordan, a lot of negative stereotypes came about. And it was always like the negative stereotypes attached to being Iraqi or Arab that I experienced. But again, like you said, I was naive, or I wouldn't say maybe naive, but I was unaware of it because it kind of didn't exist. It didn't exist. But I did experience both realities where, post 2003, when people would find out I'm Iraqi, they would be shocked and I wouldn't understand why. And they would then say something like, oh, but you don't act like it, you don't look it, you don't this, always something negative. But, in turn, it made me hang on more, like be more proud of being Iraqi. And then, I started to notice, I was always aware of the differences of not just, Arabs versus Westerners, but also within the Arab, the different identities. I was always very aware of it, what makes me Iraqi, there's so many different things than Jordanian culture, Palestinian culture, just the whole Levant area. I have Lebanese friends as well, Syrian, all that. And I was always very hyper aware of the little differences, the intricate differences. And one of the ones what I just mentioned was definitely a lot of positive things. Like, we are loud, but I love it. We are.
I know that's, we know who said that about us, but it's true. It's true. And I know, we can't deny it, right?
I go to a Jordanian wedding and then I go to an Iraqi wedding. There's a huge difference. And, when my friends come and experience that, they're like, they confirm it. And they're like, yeah, you guys know how to party.
I love our honesty, because it's like, we're not trying, when people say, or when you want to dispel stereotypes, so we're not saying that we want a certain version of ourselves to be represented. That's not true. That's not what we're saying. We have the good, the bad. What I love was through the process of the filming, and we were just so honest that yes, we are loud. And I remember Zayn one time when we were trying to help Ismail learn the Iraqi accent, and we were like, well, the other Middle Easterners kind of talk softer, and we didn't. Well, I wasn't finding the right word, but Zayn, and she's like, it's basically just ghetto. It's just ghetto air. Like, you have to
very, very vulgar.
You have to just, and I was just so, I was laughing because it's the humor that we bring forth, that knowing who we are, and that we're very, we are happy with who we are, and we acknowledge that there are issues in our community. I think being raised in the Middle East, and I don't know if this is probably more true for women, but we tend to not air our dirty laundry. Yeah. But there is an artistic way to address and share our stories, because otherwise somebody else is going to tell our stories. And guess what? That's worse. As we saw over the decades, the stories that have been represented are worse. So I went, in my case, from seeing those rack of novels that were written by Western authors about all these abused women, to later becoming a book reviewer for a magazine. And I was the one in charge of the Middle Eastern books, to reading books about abused women by their own communities. And I thought, okay, I get it. They have the right, everybody has the right to share their stories or write any stories. But what happened to the other stories? Why are they not supported or brought to the forefront? And I feel like they get neglected. And then people, it's like almost the industry is afraid that those stories are not going to really sell, because I know that the industry really cares about, the business aspect of it. But did we get people so immune to, they're just desensitized that for them to see Arab woman, like you said, people can't recognize that you are Iraqi. Same thing when I would travel to Europe, you know, and then they would speak, if I'm in Spain, they would speak to me in Spanish. If I'm
Yeah.
Italy, they think I'm Italian, and you have that Mediterranean look. And then they would be surprised. But the surprise doesn't come from, I mean, like, I wouldn't be surprised if an Italian looked like Spanish, but I think it's that viewpoint that we're trying to get, like, we're not all the same. We are individuals. We have our individual challenges, and they don't all fall under the category of just war, violence, women oppression. There's other stories that are important to us.
Definitely. And that's what happens when stories are gatekept by, you know, the industry. Let's be honest, is, you know, mostly white people. And this is my experience here in Canada. And there is that part of it where they think they're doing us a favor. It's this white savior, like, oh, you have us this like tragic story, let me help you tell it. But then when you're like, oh, we're normal people just like you. No.
That's boring.
You know? Yeah. Like, what they don't see that the damage this does is, you know, it puts us in this, like, we're always these two-dimensional characters, or this one type of, like you said, story, and that keeps us in that box, and that's all people see us as, and it ends up dehumanizing us, because, you know, it's not even, you know, when they're also writing our stories or selecting these things, it's always like we're the other, like people can't relate to that. It's just trauma and tragedy and all these things. They can't comprehend that we're just normal people. Like they don't know when, you know, when wars break out, even when wars break out, people still celebrate, and they still get together, and they still live their life, and they still think about their crushes, and they think about, you know, all these small silly problems.
Honestly, like, our homes are still full of love and laughter through the worst of conditions. So
yeah,
I went to Iraq. Yeah, I went to Iraq during the sanctions, and I wrote. So in my books, there's always humor, because you can't escape that from an Iraqi home. So when I was during the sanctions, I visited there, and I'd be in their homes, and like the topics they when you're involved in something, it's not like you wake up every day thinking, you know, I'm in a war, I'm in a sanctions. You live your life as a regular thing, and you have these family dynamics and other issues, you know, come forward, and you have your faith, and you have your, again, your challenges, your own journey to everything. But it's all like, it feels like we're so doomed when you're looking at the movies and the stories that are provided of just, it's like what ISIS did, what the women are, with the like how Mosul looks today, which actually Mosul still looks good despite everything, because there's this element in Iraq, the ancient aspect of it. So in 1921, you know, the history of Iraq, in 1921, the word Mesopotamia was changed by the British to Iraq. And when that disconnect happened, so people, it's very hard to come, you know, that's what you do, right? You change people's memory by relabeling something, or just taking away its power within the name. So Mesopotamia and Iraq got disconnected. And so oftentimes when we're talking about Iraq, all we see is the war and the violence involved in it. But when you think of Mesopotamia, ancient Mesopotamia, the cradle of civilization, where writing was invented, where the first city-state, where, yes, the first writer the first writer, which is a very influential figure in Iran's life, is Enheduanna. And, you know, and I'm sure you already probably know that was the case for me, that character, that I was a writer. I was already an established writer when I came across Enheduanna, the first recorded writer in history, which was from ancient Iraq. She was a priestess and a princess, and she wrote poetry. And I was shocked that, like, I'm like, why isn't she highlighted? How come people don't know about her? What's going on here? And I really made it like a mission. I bring her into my books whenever I can. And then finally, she became part of this whole story of the pomegranate, that Niran is influenced by her. And she uses, and it's Enheduanna who kind of, Niran channels her to the point where at some point Niran just kind of feels like, you know, she can take off on her own without the assistance. But what you said about the other institutions, I also have to say that I'm a lot older than you. Even though your age is very deceiving, you're like, we all thought you're like in your teens. And then when you're telling us the numbers, so you're such a beautiful person, by the way, really. And I'm not just talking on the outside, really, just your spirit was so helpful. You worked so hard. Your whole heart was in this, and you made sure that I think we all were doing that, but you just, as challenging as it was, you made sure that we carried through, and I really appreciate that. But I have to mention something that we also have to take responsibility as a community, that we have to support each other and support the stories that are trying to get out there. Because you can either depend on others, or, nobody takes care of your home like you do. Nobody takes care of your kids like you do. And I think it's our responsibility. And here in this project, we all proved it, that we stood behind each other, and we had each other's backs to such an extent to make sure that this happened. And even the people outside the community, seeing what we were doing, came on board. Yeah. So it really has to start from within. So we have the talent, when we put the submissions out there for talent, I can tell you, we're not short of talent. Like, there was many people, and, we picked you out of thousands, but there was many, many talented people that were out there that I was like, wow, like, we could be just making films or doing other projects or publishing books nonstop with this. And our community is beautiful, and it's got the resources, and I think they can be very instrumental and helpful in this. And obviously you're part of that, and that you're seeing the importance of these stories, and hopping on, and you recognize and you really fulfilled your role in the process. Like, what advice would you give actors, because you are established, but you did start at a young age, and I'm sure that had a lot to do with it. But for actors that are trying to break into the industry, especially of Middle Eastern background, what advice would you give them?
Where do I start? There is the hard thing about this industry and this career path, there is no clear-cut way to even to have a career. And even less so for, Middle Eastern actors, specifically Middle Eastern, like female actors as well. I think everyone has a different journey, and there are people paving the way, and it's getting like, when I grew up, I didn't see someone like me, on TV. That's why it didn't occur to me to even take up this career path. It's not something that was like on TV or talked about or anything like that. That's slowly changing. So that's great. So it starts with one, believing in yourself, to be honest, because you will have so many obstacles. There's our culture, and then there's the industry. Those two are huge. Like, the industry itself, there's a lot of barriers and a lot of obstacles. It's a very competitive industry. It's very unpredictable. So many things, like, your side of things as well. Like, a lot of movies don't get made. A lot of things get made, don't go anywhere. Some things start, you don't know where the journey will take you. And that applies to, actors as well. So one is believing in yourself. The second thing is knowing yourself too, because another thing that, I see happen over and over, and, you have to build thick skin for it, is people will try to box you in certain things. Like, oh, you are, this Middle Eastern Muslim, then you're this, you're 1, 2, 3. Oh, then you're this, 1, 2, 3. And, you have to know yourself. You have to know what you want as well for yourself. And that's very important. So it's a lot of work on yourself. That's where it begins, because you have to kind of shield yourself from rejection, from the uncertainty, from people telling you, it's not going to work out, this isn't for you, go get a traditional, whatever role, whether that's a career or a traditional role, like just go get married, become a housewife, whatever it is. Like, this isn't what you're supposed to do. This isn't what success is. In our culture, especially for women, unfortunately, success is defined by your marriageability, by a lot of things that still don't have to do with your own personal accomplishments. And then if you bypass that, your personal accomplishments, they still try to box it in a traditional setting. You have to become this or that, like whatever, doctor, lawyer, the respected professions. acting, you know, and then they do have things to back it up that are a bit logical, like you're not going to make money, you can't support yourself, you can't make it happen, whatever. There's so many things. So in order to block out all that noise and to be actually sane and happy, you have to do a lot of internal work. And then I think the universe will just put things together for you after that. I really believe that, because there is no one way for things to happen. And if you just believe that, you know, this is for you because you feel it inside that this is the only way, like this is the only kind of, not just career path, but your only kind of outlet to express yourself. And being an actor doesn't necessarily mean just having a career. You can do your own thing at home, maybe not even share it with everyone on like publicly, but being an actor, you just have, it's I think a very specific kind of way of being, and it's a certain kind of existence that only other actors will understand when I say this. It's that need, like deep need to express yourself in a certain way and like experience life in a certain way that most people won't get. So unless you have that, I think you're not going to be happy, because it is a very tough industry, and it will drive you crazy.
I have to say, I loved everything you just said and the way you expressed it, because I think what you just said, I was just reflecting on as women in this career. Even for me, it's different. I'm a writer, and it's still challenging, but in a different way. And I can see it even being more challenging as actors. But this opportunity for us to speak about this is like, a lot of the communities have had this opportunity to talk and say how difficult it is. Let me tell you, for a Middle Easterner, it's even everything that you just described, it's double that. It's double, because we are trying to break into something that hasn't been broken into. And so I loved how you said that the hard work, and then you just trust the universe. And that's what I feel brought us together, because before our interview, I was just telling you, I was like, you know, so many people were surprised that this film was even made. And I told you, I was like, yeah, even me, I was like, I'm like, okay, how did this happen? But it was, when you want something and you really work hard, at the end of the day, no industry, no family, no this, nothing can really stop you if you have that inner belief and that you work very hard at it. And it's those elements that got you where you are today, really. It wasn't one person, because even I remember the way we came in touch with you, it wasn't through, it's not necessarily who you know or any of that. We really picked based on talent, and you were talented and we saw that, but then you also knew that you had to take your things into your own hands. There was a lot of things that you made, you had to make your own choices to get this far.
And that courage, I want to say, comes from, again, the work that you have to do on yourself. And another really important thing, especially, you know, for Middle Eastern actresses, is the biggest challenge is taking ownership of your life and your body as well. One thing that they will definitely experience is, in general, like in any patriarchal society, but especially in our culture, women, you know, the male people, the male figures around them, whether they're their family or even strangers, have they feel ownership over them. Ownership, whether that's like an honor thing or a protective thing, or just plain misogyny, to be honest. They will tell you, you can't do this, you can't do that. And subconsciously, you will grow up believing that, because that's how it is. You know, who have you ever heard a sister telling her brother, no, you can't do 1, 2, 3? No, it's always the brother telling the sister, or the father telling the daughter. And it's, in our culture, it's packaged in a way that's protective for the woman. And as an actor, you have to break away from that. You have to understand that you are yourself. You own you. It's your life. It's your body. It's your career. It's your soul. Like, you are God's, you know, creation, and nobody owns you. And that is, I think, the most important piece of the puzzle, especially for women, Middle Eastern women specifically. Speaking, you know, from experience, and I see it, and I think that is what fuels that faith that we're talking about. Because once you recognize that, nothing can stop you because you are making decisions for yourself, and you know that it's only for yourself. And many things will test that.
Samya, you know how we've had so many talks where I said to you, you're going to be changing so many girls' lives. And I'm seriously, I'm so touched. I'm so inspired by every word that you're saying right now. And I saw you doing the same thing on that screen. And it's interesting that everything in the way you're talking, it's really, that's who the character, I told you that's what the character is doing. And you recognize that too. That's why you are passionate about this project. You know, the last thing I want to say is aside from women empowerment through the story and dispelling stereotypes and really bringing the authenticity of the story, I had explained early on that, you know, part of it was too because when there was all that tension that was happening between the Muslim and Chaldean community, and as a writer, I'm always, I like to, you know, for me, this is how I express myself, you know, so I love to express it. It's just, I have more freedom because I could just write it instead of like finding roles. Although I loved what you just said, that you can find any different ways nowadays. You can do it on social media to express yourself as an actress or as any role. So part of the story was just that sense of when you're neighbors and the unity that I felt when I was in Baghdad, having, as a Christian, having a Muslim neighbor who became my best friend, and her name was Niran. And at the time, I mean, the last thing we thought about was religion. And I like another word that you said, rather than being naive about something, just not being aware of it. Sometimes that's good because it comes from a place of innocence where you're just, your feelings are there and you don't see all these differences that we later grow up to see. So my best friend was Niran, and that's the character's main name. And so we lived across from each other, and our moms were like each other's moms and things like that. And in this film, it was a Christian family living across the street, a Chaldean family living across the street from a Muslim family. And I felt that in the process, we were representing what the film was portraying.
Yeah.
Because of that, a lot of people didn't even know what Chaldeans were that were like that we brought in that were not part of Michigan. What did you see was the difference? I know I took you guys aside. I took you guys to the Chaldean Cultural Center where I took you to the tour of the museum so that I could share the history that happened long before all these divisions started, right? Like if you go thousands and thousands of years back. But what really did you see that was the difference, and what were the main similarities?
I mean, for me, you know, reading the story even before diving into Chaldean culture and meeting, you know, Chaldeans and all that, it was a real treat to, you know, have the book and to have, you know, you and to be there as well to you know, as research and just to dive in.
We were like part of the research, right? We were like, yeah, you're right in the middle of it all.
The middle and the heart of it. And you know, a lot of the themes, a lot of the things are universal or things I'd personally experienced, but in a different slice of society. But this slice of society that you covered, it is unique to itself, even though it has those universal or, you know, relatable aspects. And yeah, I think that's what I love about the story. It's that it's so specific and it's based on so much reality, because life is nuanced like that, you know. There's no black and white or only this or that. Like it's all this huge mess of things it
was this whole mess in a way that at the end, when we were celebrating or when we were arguing or when we were doing whatever, nobody sat there and looked at each other as a different religion. We were just there to make something happen. And I think when we work together, whether you're in the Middle East, wherever you are in the world, once you work together to do something beautiful for the universe, all of the other things fall off. And you could be whatever background, you could be non-Middle Easterner, Black, white, Middle Easterner, women, men, it doesn't matter, because you're serving something that's higher and you're doing it from a place of love and creativity. That's why creativity is so, you know, it's very healing. And yeah, truth, exactly. We saw the authentic, the humor came, not because we were trying to make fun of anything or to try.
There's
But
no
it was
agenda,
because of
yeah.
the honesty, right?
Yeah.
It was because of the honesty and the truth of representing that culture, which I think every single culture I know and background has represented their stories, and we use this as an opportunity. And thank you again, Samya. You were just like, you were amazing, and people are going to see that when they see you on the screen. You're amazing. You were inspirational. I know you're going to touch millions of hearts, especially girls. You will be empowering a lot of people. This is just the start.
Thank you for the opportunity. It was definitely once like in a lifetime opportunity for me. Like it was out of this world. I loved experiencing everything, including like, yeah, just the personal side of seeing, you know, the what I was reading. I saw it in real life, to on being on set with everyone else and yourself and everything.
And I think that for me, like, I know all of you guys that were a part of this, because you're so talented, you will and young, you will continue to succeed in this path, because you've done such amazing work, and this is how you even got to this point. But what I love about it is that it's more than just about the film. I know that given how your personality and the representation that you have, it's just a part of just you having a platform to have a voice to continue making these changes that are really needed. So you are not just serving this talent on a personal level, but you are also going to be touching the hearts of many, many people, and providing more of an opportunity for our voices. So thank you, Samya.
Thank you so much.
We'll be watching for your further success. Thank you, everybody, for watching.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.